Sweet. Okay. Nice. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. No, let me switch the back to no green screen. That's okay. I'll crop it later. Welcome back, everybody, to another installation of Wicked. All right. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome. It is so good to have you here today. Um, you have stumbled upon a book reading. In case that has somehow you missed it. But anyway, so every week, every Monday from 8 to 9, around this time or so, we we read. And if you happen to have missed any of the previous readings of Wicked, do not worry. I've already got them listed on my playlist on my channel here. So you just find Wicked and then start from number 1, and they're already listed. And if you happen to have also missed any of the other books that I have read so far, you can also find them on my book readings playlist. Again, same thing. They're titled, they are numbered, so there's no guesswork on your part. You just pick which book you want to listen to me read from, and you just go on from there. So easy peasy. All right, so as you can see, this is how much we have read so far. This is how much we have left. So if you are joining us for the first time, you've missed a lot. But again, that's okay. Just come back to this video later, watch the other readings, get caught up, because this is a lot. If you have seen the Broadway show, if you have seen the first of 2 movies that have been made, and you have not read this book, you will probably be surprised, kind of like I was, to realize that there's a lot of darker, more adult themes in this book. How they managed to make such a relatively bright, bubbly, kind of go-getter story out of this is impressive. It's an impressive feat, to be sure. But if you have kids and you are seeing this video for the first time, hi Mimi. I am Mimi as well. If you have kids and you are seeing this video, and if this is not for little kids, this is not the, oh, sweet, cool, my kids loved the Broadway show, my kids loved the movie. No, this is, if you have little ones, this is not for them, just so you know. This is the only warning you get, like, not for kids. Teenagers, fine. Young adults, fine, obviously, but no little ones, because there are some very adult themes in this book. So, with that being out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. All right. Junior? What? Sir? Anyway, here we go. The Jasper Gates of Kiamo Ko, Chapter 1. Sarima, said her younger sister, wake up. Nap time's over. We have a house guest at supper, and I need to know if we have to go kill a hen. There are so few left, and what we give the traveler we miss all winter in eggs. What do you think? The Dowager Princess of the Arjikis groaned. Details, details, she said. Can't I train you to figure out anything for yourself? Very well, snapped the sister. I shall decide, and then you can go without your morning egg when we're 1 short. Oh, 6. Don't mind me, said Sarima. It's just that I'm scarcely awake. Who is it? Some patriarch with bad breath who plans to bore us with tales of the hunting he did 50 years ago? Why do we allow it? It's a woman, more or less, said 6. Now that's uncalled for, said Sarima, sitting up. We are none of us the blushing nymphs we once were, Six. From across the room she saw herself reflected in the wardrobe glass, pale as milk pudding, her still pretty face nestled in the puddles of fat that fell according to the laws of gravity. Just because you're the youngest, Six, and can still locate your waist, there's no need to be unkind. Six pouted. Well, it's just a woman then. So, chicken or no? Tell me now so Four can hack off its head and get to plucking, or we won't eat before midnight. We'll have fruit and cheese and bread and fish. Is there fish in the fish well, I suppose? Yes, there was. Six turned to go, but remembered to say, I brought you a glass of sweet tea. It's there on your vanity. Bless you. Now, tell me, without sarcasm if you please, what's our guest like, really? Green as sin, thin and crooked, older than any of us, dressed in black like an old Mont, but not all that old. I'd guess, 30 maybe, 32. She won't give her name. Green? How divine, said Sarima. Divine isn't the word that comes to mind, said Six. You don't mean green with jealousy. You mean actually green? Maybe it's from jealousy, I could not say, but she is surely green. Genuine grass green. Oh la! Well, I'll wear white tonight so as not to clash. Is she alone? She came in with the caravan we saw down in the valley yesterday. She stopped here with a little company of beasts, a wolf dog, a hive of bees, a youth, some crows, and a baby monkey. What'll she do with all of them in the mountains this winter? Ask her yourself. Six wrinkled her nose. She made me shudder. Half-set gelatin makes you shudder. When's dinner tonight? 7 chimes and a half. She turns my stomach. Six left, having run out of expressions of disgust, and Sarima had her tea in bed until her bladder complained. Six had banked up the fire and drawn the curtains, but Sarima pulled them back to look down into the courtyard. Kiamo Ko boasted corner turrets and towers, built on massive circular salients thrusting upward from the stone of the mountain itself. After the Ajiki clan had wrested the building from the Waterworks Commission, they had added toothy crenellations for defense. Despite the reworkings, the plan of the house was still simple. It was built in the general shape of a U, a central hall with 2 long, narrow wings thrusting forward around a steeply pitched yard. When it rained, the water churned over the cobbles and slipped out under the carved gates of iron oak and jasper panels, past the sickly cluster of village houses nestled up against the castle's outside walls. At this hour the courtyard was charcoal gray, cold and filthy with scraps of hay and bits of leaf flying in the wind. There was a light in the old cobbler's shed, a smoke spinning from the chimney that badly wanted repointing, like everything else in this decaying manse. Sarima was glad the guest hadn't been shown into the house proper. As Dowager Empress of the Arjikis, she enjoyed the privilege of welcoming a traveler into the private chambers of Kiamo Ko. After bathing, she dressed in a white shift with white piping and put on the beautiful torque that had arrived, like a message from the other land, from her dear departed husband several months after the incident. Out of habit, Sarima shed a few tears, admiring herself within the flat embrace of its jeweled, segmented collar. If it was too dressy for this itinerant, Sarima could always drape a napkin over it. But she would still know it was there. Even before her tears had dried, she was humming, looking forward to the novelty of a guest. She peeped in on the children before going down. They were jumpy. Strangers always did that to them. Irji and Manek, 12 and 11, were almost old enough to want to bust out of this nest of venomous doves. Irji was soft and cried a lot, but Manek was a little bantam, always had been. If she let them go off to the grasslands with the clan in the summer migration, they both might have their throats slit. There were too many clansmen to claim leadership for themselves or their sons. So Sarima kept her boys near. Her daughter, Noor, long-legged and thumb-sucking at 9 years old, still needed a lap to crawl into before going to sleep. Dressed for the meal, Sarima was inclined to forbid it, but relented. Nor had a delicate lisp, and she said, "Running in the rain for running in the rain." She befriended stones and candles and blades of grass that grew against all logic in the cracks of the coping stones around the windows. She sighed and rubbed her face against the torque and said, "There's a boy, too, mamma. We played with him in the mill yard." "What's he like? Is he green, too?" "Nah, he's all right. He's a big baby, fat and strong, and Manek was throwing stones at him to see how far they would bounce off him. He let him do it. Maybe if you're fat, it doesn't hurt?" "I doubt it. What's his name?" "Lear. Isn't that a queer name?" "It sounds foreign. And his mother?" "I don't know her name, and I don't think she's his mother. He wouldn't say when we asked. Irji said he must be a bastard. Lear said he didn't care. He's nice." She moved her right thumb into her mouth, and with her left hand felt the cloth of Serena's gown just below the torque, until she found a nipple, and she ran her thumb over it lovingly, as if it were a small pet. Manek made him pull down his trousers so he could make sure his thing wasn't green. Sarima disapproved, on the grounds of hospitality, if nothing else, but was compelled to ask, "And what did you see?" "Well, you know." Nor turned her head into her mother's neck, and then squeezed from the powder with which from the then sneezed from the powder with which Sarima kept her chins from chafing. "Stupid-looking boy's thing. Smaller than Manek and Irji, but not green. I was so bored I didn't look much." "Neither would I. That was very rude." "I didn't make him do it. Manek did." "Well, no more of that. Now let's have a story before sleeping. I've got to go down soon, so a short one. What do you want to hear, my little one?" "I want to hear the story of the witch and the fox babies." With less drama than usual, Sarima rattled through the tale of how the three fox babies were kidnapped and caged and fed to fatness in preparation for a cheese and foxling casserole, and how the witch went to go get fire from the sun to cook them. But when the witch came back to her cave, exhausted and in possession of Father Flame, the foxlings outwitted her by singing a lullaby to make her sleep. When the witch's arm fell, the flame from the sun burned the door off the cage, and out the foxlings ran. Then they howled down Old Mother Moon to come and stand as an unmovable door in the entrance of the cave. Sarima ended with the traditional back and forth. And there the wicked old witch stayed for a good long time. "Did she ever come out?" asked Nor, doing her line from an almost hypnagogic state. "Not yet," said Sarima, kissing and biting her daughter on the wrist, which made them both giggle. And then lights out. The stairs from Sarima's private apartment ran without railings down into the castle keep, hugging first one wall and then, after the corner, another. She descended the first flight full of grace and self-possession, her white skirts billowing, her torque a yoke of soft colors and precious metals, her face a careful composition of welcome. At the landing she saw the traveler, sitting on a bench in an alcove, looking up at her. She made it down the second flight to the flagstoned level, aware of the cynicism that seethed beneath her loyal remembrance of Fiyero, aware of her overbite, of her lost prettiness, of her weight, of the silliness of being the doyenne over nothing but irritating children and backbiting younger sisters, of the thin pretense of authority that scarcely masked her fear of the present, the future, and even the past. "How do you do?" she managed. "You are Sarima?" said the woman, standing, her stalactite of chin thrust forward like a rotted Swede. "Likely to be," she said, glad of the torque. It seemed like a shield now to protect her from being punctured by that chin. "Greetings to you, my friend. Yes, I am Sarima, mistress of Kyamo Ko. Where do you come from, and how were you called?" "I come from the back of the wind," said the woman, and I have given up my name so often I don't like to bring it out again for you." "Well, you are welcome here," said Sarima as smoothly as she could, "but if we have nothing else to call you by, you will have to be Auntie. Will you come in to dine? We'll be serving out soon." "I won't eat until we speak," said the guest. "Not under your roof in false pretenses for one night. I'd rather lie at the bottom of a lake. Sarima, I know who you are. I went to school with your husband. I've known about you for a dozen years or so." "Of course," said Sarima then, things clicking. The old, treasured details of her husband's life came rushing up. "Of course Fiyero talked of you. And of your sister Nessie, right? Nessa Rose. And of the glamorous Glinda, with whom I think he was a little in love, and the playful inverted boys, and Averick, and solid old Bock. I had wondered if that happy time of his life was always to be self-contained, always his and never mine. You are good to have come to call. I should have liked a season or two at Shiz. But I didn't have the brains, I fear, nor my family the money. I would have remembered you in a minute. Well, the color of your skin. There's nothing like it, is there? Or am I too provincial?" "No, it's unique," said the guest. "Before we say 10 sentences of polite nonsense to each other, I have to tell you something, Sarima. I think I was the cause of Fiero's death." "Well, you're not the only one," interrupted Sarima. "It's a national pastime out here, blaming oneself for the death of a prince. An opportunity for public grieving and atonement, which I secretly believe people enjoy just a little bit." The guest twisted her fingers, as if to pry open a space for herself in Sarima's opinions. "I can tell you how. I want to tell you. Not unless I want to hear it, which is my prerogative. This is my house, and I choose to hear what I want." "You must hear it, so that I can be forgiven," said the woman, turning her shoulders this way and that, almost as if she were a beast of burden with an invisible yoke on her. Sarima did not like to be ambushed in her own home. Time enough to consider these sudden implications, when she felt up to it, and not until. She reminded herself that she was in charge, and thus she could afford to be kind. "If I remember rightly," said Sarima. Her mind was racing with memory. "You're the one. Fiero talked of you, of course. Elphaba. That's it. You're the one who didn't believe in the soul. I remember that much. So what's to forgive, dearie? I know you're travel-weary. It's impossible to get here without being travel-weary. And you need a good hot meal and a few nights of sleep. And we'll chat some morning next week." Sarima linked her arm with Elphaba's. "But I'll preserve your name from them, if you like," said Sarima. She walked Elphaba through the tall warped oak doors into the dining hall and called, "Look who's here, Auntie Guest." The sisters were standing beside their chairs, hungry and curious and impatient. 4 had the ladle in the tureen, stirring. 6 had dressed in a hostile puce. 2 and 3, the twins, looked piously at their prayer cards. 5 was smoking and blowing concentric rings toward the platter of yellow eyeless fish that they had dragged up from the underground lake. "Sisters, rejoice! An old friend of Fiero's has come to share fond memories and enliven our lives. Welcome her as you do me." Perhaps an unfortunate choice of words, as the sisters all resented and despised Sarima. Why had she married someone who would die so early and condemn them not just to spinsterhood but to deprivation and denial? Elphaba didn't speak through the entire meal or look up from her plate. She devoured the fish, though, and the cheese and the fruit. Sarima deduced from her eating habits that she had lived under a rule of silence at meals, and wasn't surprised, later, to hear about the Montree. They took a glass of precious sherry in the music room, and 6 entertained them with a wobbling nocturne. The guest looked miserable, which made the sisters happy. Sarima sighed. The one thing that could be said about the guest was this: she was older than Sarima. Perhaps, for the short while of her stay, Elphaba would come out of that sulk and lend an ear to how troubling and trying Sarima's life was. It would be nice to have a chat with someone not in the family. A week passed before Sarima said to Three, "Please tell our auntie guest that I'd like to see her tomorrow for elevenses in the solar." Sarima thought that Elphaba had had enough time now to get the measure of things. The suffering green woman was in some sort of slow-motion thrall or fit. She moved jerkily, stalking about the courtyard or stamping into meals as if trying to poke holes in the flooring with her heels. Her elbows were always bent at right angles, and her hands clenched and unclenched themselves. Sarima felt stronger than ever, which wasn't very. It did her some good to have a contemporary around, however thwarted she might be. The sisters disapproved of Sarima's cordiality, but the higher mountain passes were already closed for the winter, and you just couldn't send a stranger packing into the treacherous valleys. The sisters conferred in their parlor as they busied themselves knitting hateful gray potholders for the undeserving poor at Lurlinimus. "She's sick," they said. "She's inert, unfinished." Even more than they were was the unspoken corollary, an immensely gratifying notion. "She's damned." And is that fat balloon of a boy her son, or a child slave? Or is he one of her familiars? Behind Sarima's back, they called the woman living in the cobble shed Auntie Witch, echoing the old legends of Cumbricia, which were viler and more persistent in the Kells than elsewhere in Oz. It was Manek, Sarima's middle child, who was the most curious. One morning, as the boys all stood on a battlement pissing over the side, a game poor Noor had to pretend no interest in, Manek said, "What if we peed on Auntie? Would she scream?" "She'd turn you into a toad," said Lear. "No, I mean, would it hurt her? She looks like water gives her the aches and shakes. Does she even drink it? Or does it make her insides hurt?" Lear, not an especially observant child, said, "I think she doesn't drink it. Sometimes she washes things, but she uses sticks and brushes. We better not pee on her." "And what does she do with all those bees? And the monkey? Are they magic?" "Yeah," said Lear. "What kind of magic?" "I don't know." They stepped away from the dizzying drop, and Noor came running up. "I have a magic straw," she said, holding up a brown bristle, "from the witch's broom." "Is the broom magic?" said Manek to Lear. "Yes, it can sweep the floor real fast." "Can it talk? Is it enchanted? What does it say?" They got more interested, and Lear bloomed and blushed under their curiosity. "I can't tell. It's a secret." "Is it still a secret if we push you off the tower?" Lear considered. "What do you mean?" "Will you tell us, or we'll do it?" "Don't push me off the tower, you oafs." "If the broom is magic, it'll come flying by and save you. Besides, you're so fat you'd probably bounce." Irji and Noor laughed at that, despite themselves. It made a very funny picture in their minds. "We only want to know what secrets the broom says to you," said Manek with a big smile. "So tell us, or we'll push you off." "You're not being nice. He's company," said Noor. "Come on, let's go find some mice in the pantry and make friends." "In a minute. Let's push Lear off the roof first." "No," said Noor, beginning to cry. "You boys are so mean. Are you sure that broom is magic, Lear?" But Lear, by now, didn't want to say any more. Manek tossed a pebble off the roof, and it seemed a very long time before the ping of impact. Lear's face had, in a matter of moments, developed deep black pockets under his eyes. He held his hands down by his sides like a traitor at a court-martial. "The witch will be so mad at you that she will hate you," Lear said. "I don't think so," said Manek, taking a step forward. "She won't care. She likes the monkey more than she likes you. She won't even notice if you're dead." Lear gasped for air. Although he had just peed, The front of his baggy trousers turned dark with wet. "Look, Irji," said Manek, and his older brother looked. "He's not even very good at being alive, is he? It's not like it would be much of a loss. Come on, Lear, tell me, what did the damned broom say to you?" Lear's upper torso was going in and out like a bellows. He whispered, "The broom told me that you're all going to die." "Oh, is that all?" said Manek. "We already knew that. Everybody dies. We knew that already." "You did?" said Lear, who hadn't. "Come on," Irji said. "Come on. Let's catch some mice in the pantry and we can cut off their tails and use Nor's magic straw to prick their eyes." "No," said Nor, but Irji had swiped the straw from her. Manek and Irji went clattering, loose-limbed as marionettes, along the parapet and down the stairs. With a huge, aggrieved sigh, Lear composed himself and adjusted his clothes, and followed them like a condemned dwarf laborer in the emerald mines. Nor stayed behind, her arms folded defiantly, her chin working with frustration. Then she spit over the edge and felt better, and chased after the boys. At mid-morning, Six showed the guest into the solar. With a smirk behind Auntie's back, she deposited a tray of cruel little biscuits, hard as slate, on a table covered with a carpet gone brown and patternless. Sarima, having made her way through what she could of her daily spiritual ablutions, felt ready. "You've been here a week, and it's likely to be longer," said Sarima, allowing Six to pour out some gall-root coffee before dismissing her. "The trail north is snowed in by now, and there's not a safe haven between here and the plains. The winters are hard in the mountains, and while we can make do with our stores and our own company, we treasure a change. Milk? I do not know exactly what you had intended, once you had visited us sufficiently, I mean." "There are rumors of caves in these kells," said Elphaba, almost more to herself than to Sarima. "I lived for some years at the cloister of St. Glinda in the Shale Shallows, outside the Emerald City. Dignitaries would visit, and while we were often under a vow of silence, none the less people would talk of what they knew. Monastic cells. I had thought, when I was done here, that I might take myself to a cave and set up housekeeping," said Sarima, as if this were as usual as marrying and bearing babies. "Some do it, I know. There's an old hermit on the western slope of Broken Bottle. That's a peak nearby. They say he's been there for some years, and has reverted to a more primitive moment of nature. Of his nature, I mean." "A life without words," Elfie said, looking at her coffee and not drinking it. "They say this hermit has forgotten about personal hygiene," said Sarima, "which, given how the boys smell when they go unwashed for a couple of weeks, strike me as nature's defense against marauding beasts." "I didn't expect to be here for a long time," Elfie said, twisting her head on her neck like a parrot, and looking at Sarima in an odd way. "Oh, beware," thought Sarima carefully, though she tended to like this guest. "Beware. She's taking the direction of the discussion into her own hands. This won't do." But the guest went on. "I had thought that I would have a night or two, maybe 3, and could find myself a hidey-hole before winter set in. I was working on the wrong calendar. I was thinking of how and when winter came to Shiz and the Emerald City. But you're 6 weeks ahead here. Ahead in the autumn, and behind in the spring, alas," said Sarima. She took her feet off her hassock and placed them on the floor, flatly, to indicate seriousness. "Now, my new friend, there are some things I need to say to you." "I have things too," Elfie said, but Sarima went on this time. "You will think me an unpolished person, and you were right, of course. Oh, when I was selected to be a child bride, a good governess was hired from Gillikin to teach me and my sisters how to use verbs and pronouns and salad forks, and lately I have begun to master reading. But most of what I picked up about polite behavior was from what Fierro was good enough to instruct me in when he returned from his education. No doubt I make social mistakes. You have every right to snigger behind my back. I am not given to sniggering, snapped Elphaba. As it may be, but I still have opinions, and I am observant even if unschooled. Despite my sheltered life, married at the age of 7, as you may know, raised and reared behind castle curtain walls, I trust my own sense of things and won't be dissuaded. So let me continue, she said, as Elphaba tried to interrupt. There is plenty of time, and the sun is nice in here, isn't it? My little hideaway. It seems you have it seems to me that you have come here to, shall we say, relieve yourself of some sad business or other. You have the look about you. Don't be startled, my dear. If there's a look I do recognize, it's the look of someone carrying a burden. Remember, I listen to my sisters, year in and year out, as they graciously share with me all the ways they hate me, and why. She smiled, amused at her own wit. You want to throw down your burden? Throw it down at my feet, or across my shoulders. You want perhaps to weep a little, to say good-bye, and then to leave. And when you leave here, you will walk right out of the world. I will do no such thing, said Elfie. You will indeed, even if you don't know it. You will have nothing left to tie you to the world. But I know my own limits, Auntie guessed, and I know what you're here for. You told me. You told me in the hall. You said you felt you were responsible for Fierro's death. I don't. Just don't. This is my home, and I am a nominal dowager princess of duck shit. But I have a right to hear, and I have a right not to hear, even to make a traveler feel better. I don't. But I don't want to burden you, Sarima. I want to unburden you with the truth. If you permit me, you are the larger, the lighter. Forgiveness blesses the donor as well as the receiver. I'll overlook that remark about my being the larger, said Sarima, but I still have the right to choose, and I think you wish me ill. You wish me ill and you don't even know it. You want to punish me for something, maybe for not being a good enough wife to Fierro. You wish me ill, and you fool yourself to think it's some therapeutic course of tablets. Do you know how he died, at least? Said Elphaba. I know it was a violent action, and I know his body was never found. I know it was in a little love nest, said Sarima, for a minute losing her resolve. I don't care to know who it was exactly, but I've heard enough about that vile Sir Chuffrey to have my strong opinion. Sir Chuffrey! I said no. I said no more. Now I have an offer to make of you, Auntie, if you will have it. You and the boy may move into the southwest tower if you like. There are a couple of big round rooms with high ceilings and good light, and you'll be out of that drafty cobble shed and warmer. You'll have your own staircase to come and go into the main hall, and you won't bother the girls, and they won't trouble you. You can't stay in that cobble shed all winter. The boy has been looking pale and blubbery. I think he's always cold. You're there on the condition, I'm afraid, that you accept my firmest word on these matters. I don't care to discuss my husband or the affairs of his death with you. Elphaba looked horror-struck and beaten. I have no choice but to accept, she said, at least for the time being. But I warn you, I intend to befriend you so thoroughly that you will change your mind, and I do think you need to hear things. You need to talk about them, as I do. And I can't leave into the wilderness until I have your solemn promise of— Enough, said Sarima. Call the porter from the gatehouse and have him bring your luggage to the tower. Come, I'll show you. You haven't touched your coffee. She stood. For an awkward moment, there was respect and submission in equal measure, simmering on the carpet like the dust in the sunbeams. Come, Sarima said more softly, At the very least, you need to be warm. You must be able to say that much of this. You must be able to say that much of us country mice here at Kiamoko. I don't think I mentioned that that was chapter 2. This is chapter 3. As far as Elphaba was concerned, it was a witch's room, and she reveled in it. Like all good witches' rooms in children's stories, it was a room with bowed walls, following the essential form of a tower. It had one broad window that, since it faced east, away from the wind, could be unbarred and opened without blowing everyone and everything out into the snowy valleys. Beyond the great kells were a rank of sentinels, purple-black when the winter sun rose over them, draining into blue-white screens as the sun moved overhead, and going golden and ruddy in the late afternoon. There were sometimes rumbling collapses of ice and scree. The winter gripped the house. Elphaba learned soon enough to stay put, unless she was sure another room had a warmer fire, and except for Sarima, she didn't care for the other human company the house afforded. Sarima lived in the west wing with the children, the boys Irji and Manek, the girl Noor. Sarima's 5 sisters lived in the east wing. They were called numbers 2 through 6, and if they had ever had other names, they had withered away from disuse. By right of their unmarriageability, the sisters claimed the best rooms in the place, although Sarima had the solar. Where Lear curled up to sleep, Elphaba did not know, but he reappeared every morning to change the rags at the bottom of the crow's perch. He brought her cocoa, too. Lurlinimus drew near, and out came some tired decorations from which the gilt had all but vanished. The children spent a whole day tying baubles and toys to the archways, making the grown-ups bump their heads and curse. Manek and Irji took a saw and without permission went beyond the castle walls to claim some boughs of spruce and sprigs of holly. Noor stayed behind and painted scenes of happy life in the castle on sheets of paper that she and Lear had found in Auntie Witch's room. Lear said he couldn't draw, so he wandered off and disappeared, perhaps to stay clear of Manek and Irji. The house fell still until there was a flurry of copper pans thrown about the kitchen. Noor went running to see, and Lear arrived from some hiding cubby to look too. It was Chistery. The monkey was having a fit, and all the sisters, baking gingerbread, were throwing gobbets of batter at him, trying to knock him off the wheel that hung, noisy with swinging utensils, above the work table. "How'd he get in here?" said Noor. "Get him out, Lear! Call him!" said two. But Lear had no more authority over Chistery than they did. The monkey flew to the top of a wardrobe, then to a huge dried goods canister, and he pulled open a drawer and found a precious store of raisins, which he stuffed in his mouth. Six said, "Go get the ladder from the hall, you two, and bring it here." But when they had, Chistery was back on the wheel, making it whirl and clatter like a roundabout at a carnival. 4 put a lump of mashed melon in a bowl. 5 and 3 took off their aprons, ready to rush him when he came down. Chistery was still eyeing the fruit when the door smacked open against the wall, and Elphaba came lolloping in. "All this commotion! How can you hear yourselves think?" she cried, and then took in the sight of Chistery, suddenly abject and remorseful, and of the sisters, poised to ensnare him in their flowery aprons. "What the hell is this?" she said. "No need to yell," said two sulkily, quietly, but they put down their aprons. "I mean, what is this? What is really going on here? You all look like Killjoy, with bloodlust in your faces. You're white with rage at this poor beast." "I think it's not rage, it's flour," said 5, which made them giggle. "You filthy savages," said Elfie. "Chistery, come here. Come down here, right now. You women deserve to be unmarried, so you don't bring any little savage, creepy children into the world. Don't you ever lay a hand on this monkey, do you hear me? And how did he get out of my room anyway? I was in the solar with your sister." "Oh," said Noor, remembering. "Oh, Auntie, I'm sorry, it was us. You? She turned and looked at Nor as if for the first time, and Nor didn't like it much. She shrank back against the door of the cold cellar. What were you skulking about in my room for? Said Elfie. Some paper? Said Nor faintly, and in a desperate, all or nothing gamble said, I made some paintings for everybody. Do you want to see? Come here. Chistery in her arms, Elphaba followed them into the draughty hall, where the wind under the front door was making the papers flutter against the carved stone. The sisters came too, a safe distance behind. Elfie got very quiet. This is my paper, she said. I didn't say you could use it. Look, it has words on the back. Do you know what words are? Of course I do. Do you think I am slow? Responded Nor sassily. You leave my papers alone, said Elphaba. She and Chistery then flew up the steps, and the door to the tower slammed behind them. Who wants to help roll out the gingerbread? Said two, relieved that skulls hadn't been knocked together. And this hall looks very pretty, chickadees. I'm sure Prunella and Lurline will be impressed tonight. The children went back into the kitchen and made gingerbread people, and crows, and monkeys, and dogs. But they couldn't do bees. They were too small. When Irji and Minek came in, dumping snowy greens on the slate floor, they helped the gingerbread shapes too, but they made naughty shapes that they wouldn't show the younger children, and they kept gobbling up the raw dough and laughing hysterically at it, which made everyone else testy. In the morning the children awoke and ran downstairs to see if Lurline and Prunella had been there. Sure enough, there was a brown wicker basket with a green and gold ribbon on it. A basket, and a ribbon that Sarima's children had seen many years in a row. And in it were 3 small colored boxes, each one with an orange, a puppet, a small sack of marbles, and a gingerbread mouse. Where's mine? Said Lear. Don't see one with your name on it, said Irji. Look, Irji, Manek, Nur. I guess Prunella left it for you at your old house. Where did you used to live? I don't know, said Lear, and started to cry. Here, you can have the tail of my mouse. Just the tail, said Nor kindly. First, you have to say, May I please have the tail of your mouse? May I please have the tail of your mouse, said Lear, though his words were almost unintelligible. And I promise to obey you. Lear mumbled on. The exchange was eventually completed. From shame, Lear didn't mention the oversight. Sarima and the sisters never took it in. Elphaba didn't show her face all day, but she sent down a message that Lurlenimus Eve and Lurlenimus always made her ill, and she was taking a few days in solitary comfort, and she wanted to be disturbed neither with meals, nor visitors, nor noise of any kind. So while Sarima took herself off to her private chapel to remember her dear husband on this holy day, the sisters and the children all sang carols as loudly as they could. Chapter 4. A few weeks later, when the children were having snowball battles, and Sarima was concocting some medicinal toddy in the kitchen, Elfie left her room at last and skulked down the stairs and knocked on the door of the sisters' parlor. They didn't like it, but they felt obliged to welcome her. The silver tray with bottles of hard liquor, the precious crystal carried on donkey... What? Oh, the precious crystal carried on donkey all the way from Dixie House in Gillikin, the prettiest and richest of native carpets on the floor, the luxury of fireplaces at both sides of the room, each blazing merrily. Well, they would have toned it down some had they had any warning. As it was, 4 hid in the sofa cushions the leather volume of which she had been reading aloud, a racy history of a poor young woman beset by an abundance of handsome suitors. It had been a gift from Fiyero once, the best gift he had ever sent the sisters. Also the only one. Would you like some lemon barley water? Said Six, ever the servant until the day she died, unless by luck everyone else died sooner. Yes, all right, Elphaba said. Do take a seat. This seat here, you'll find it most comfy. Elfie didn't look as if she wanted to be comfy, but she sat there anyway, stiff and uneasy in that quilted cocoon of a room. She took the tiniest sip possible from her drink, as if suspecting hellebore. I suppose I need to apologize for that flurry over Chistery, she said. I know I am your guest here at Kyomoko. I just flew off the handle. Well, you did just that, started Five. But the others said, Oh, think nothing of it. We all have days like that. In fact, for us it usually happens on the same day. It's been that way for years. It's very taxing, Elfie said with some effort. I spent many years under a vow of silence, and I haven't always learned how loud it is permissible to get. Besides that, this is a foreign culture, in a way. We Arjikis have always been proud of being able to speak to any other citizen in Oz, said Two. We are as equally at home with the ragged vagabond Scrow to our south, as well as with the elite in the Emerald City to our east. Not that they'd ever been out of the Vinkus. A little nibble? Said Three, bringing out a tin of marzipan fruits. No, Elfie said, but I wonder what you could tell me of your sister's particular sadness. They sat poised, tempted and suspicious. I enjoy my chats with her in the solar, said Elfie, but whenever the talk gets around to her departed husband, whom as you may realize I myself knew, she is unwilling to discuss a thing. Oh, well, it was so sad, said Two. A tragedy, said Three. For her, said Four. For us, said Five. Auntie guessed, take a little orange liqueur in your lemon barley, said Six. It comes from the balmy slopes of the Lesser Kells and is quite a luxury. Well, just a drop, said Elfie, but didn't sip it. She put her elbows on her knees and leaned forward and said, Please tell me how she learned of Fiero's death. There was a silence. The sisters avoided casting glances at one another, busying themselves with the pleats of their skirts. After a pause, it was Two who said, That sad day. It stings in the memory still. The others adjusted themselves in their seats, turning slightly toward her. Elphaba blinked twice, looking like one of her crows. Two told the tale, without sentiment or drama. One of Fiero's business colleagues, an Arjiki trader, had come through the mountain pass at the first spring thaw, on the back of a mountain skark. He asked to meet with Sarima and insisted her sisters be around to support her at his woeful news. He told them how, on Lurlinimus, he had received at his club an anonymous message that Fiero had been murdered. There was an address in a disreputable area. Not even a residential neighborhood. The clansmen hired a couple of brutes and broke down the door of the warehouse. Inside was a small apartment hidden upstairs, a place of assignation, obviously. The clansmen reported this without flinching, perhaps as a power-mongering maneuver. There was evidence of struggle and massive quantities of blood, so thick in places that it was still tacky. The body had been removed, and it was never recovered. Elphaba only nodded grimly at this recounting. For a year, continued Two, our dear distraught Sarima refused to believe that he was really dead. We would not have been surprised at a ransom note, but by the following Lurlinimus, when no further word about it had arrived, we had to accept the inevitable. Besides, the clan had gone on as long as it could with an ad hoc collaborative leadership. They demanded a single chief, and one was put forward, and he served well. When Irji comes of age, he may claim the rights of progenitorship, if he's bold enough. He is not yet bold at all. Manek is the more obvious candidate, but he's only second in line. And what does Sarima believed happened? Said Elfie. And you? All of you. Now that the grimmest part of the story had been told, the other sisters felt they could chime in. It emerged that Sarima had for some years suspected Fiera of having an affair with an old college chum named Glinda, a Gillikinese girl of legendary beauty. Legendary? Elfie said. He told us all how charming she was, how self effacing, what grace and sparkle. Is it all that likely he'd gush on and on about a woman he was committing adultery with? Men, said two, are, as we all know, both cruel and cunning. What better ruse than to admit fervently and often that he admired her? Sarima had no grounds on which to accuse him of slyness and deception. He never stopped being attentive to her. In his cold, morose, withdrawn, embittered fashion, interjected three. Hardly the thing one reads about in novels, said four. If one read novels, said five. Which we don't, said six, closing her lips over a marzipan pear. And so Sarima believes her husband was carrying on with this, this dazzler, said two. You must have known her. Didn't you go to Shiz? I knew her a bit, Elfie said, her mouth forgetting to shut itself. She was having a hard time keeping up with the multiple narrators. I haven't seen her in many years. And it is clear in Sarima's mind what happened, said two. Glinda was, for all I know still is, married to a wealthy older gentleman named Sir Chuffrey. He must have suspected something, and had her followed and found out what was going on. Then he had some thugs kill the bastard. I mean, poor Fiyero. Doesn't that make sense? It's entirely plausible, Elfie said slowly. But is there any proof? No proof at all, said four. If there were, family honor would have required a retributive murder of Sir Chuffrey, but he may still be in robust good health. No, it's only a theory, but it's what Sarima believes. Clings to, said six. And why not, said five. It's her prerogative, said three. Everything is her prerogative, said two sadly. Besides, think of it. If your husband were murdered, wouldn't it be easier to bear if you thought he deserved it, even just a little? No, Elfie said, I don't think it would. Neither do we, admitted two, but we think that's what she thinks. And you? Elfie asked, studying the pattern in the carpet, the blood-red lozenges, the thorny margins, the beasts, and acanthus leaves, and rose medallions. What do you think? We hardly can be expected to subscribe to a unanimous opinion, said two, but she barreled ahead anyway. It seems reasonable to suppose that unbeknownst to us, Fiyero had gotten involved in some political enterprise in the Emerald City. A stay that was to be a month became 4, said four. Had he political sensibilities? Said Elphaba. He was the prince of the Arjikis, 5 reminded them all. He had connections, responsibilities, allegiances. Who of us could guess at them? It was his duty to have opinions on things we shouldn't need to know about. Was he sympathetic to the wizard? Said Elfie. Are you saying he was involved in any of those campaigns? Those pogroms? First the quadlings, then the animals, said 3. You look surprised that we should know about these things. Do you think we're so very removed from the rest of Oz? We are removed, said 2, but we listen to talk. We like to feed travelers when they come to stop. We know life can be rotten out there. The wizard is a despot, said 4. Our home is our castle, said 5 at the same time. Some removal from all this is healthy. We retain our moral fiber, unsullied. They all smirked simultaneously. But do you think Fiyero had an opinion about the wizard? Elphaba asked again, pressing with some urgency. He kept his own counsel, snapped two. For the sake of sweet Lurline, dear auntie, he was a prince and a man, and we were nothing but his younger, dependent sisters-in-law. Do you think he would confide in us? He could have been a high-level crony of the wizard for all we know. He surely would have had liaisons with the palace. He was a prince, even if only of our small tribe. What he did with those liaisons, who are we to say? But we don't think he died as the victim of a jealous husband. As the victim of a jealous husband. Maybe we're sheltered, but we don't. We think he got caught in the crossfire of some fringe struggle, or he was found out in the act of betrayal of one excitable group or another. He was a handsome man, said two, and none of us would deny it, then or now, but he was intense and private, and we doubt he'd have loosened up enough to have an affair. By the smallest gesture, a sucking in of her abdomen and squaring of her shoulders, two betrayed the foundation of her position. How could he have succumbed to this Glinda's charms if he had been able to resist his own sisters-in-law? But, Elfie asked in a small voice, do you really think he was a spy for someone? Why was his body never found? Said two. If it had been a jealous rage, his body needn't have been removed. Perhaps he hadn't died yet. Perhaps he was taken to be tortured. No, in our limited experience, we think that this smacks of treachery of a political stripe, not a romantic one. Said Elphaba. You're pale, dear. Six, please, a beaker of water. No, said Elphaba, it's just so... blah. One never thought at the time. Shall I tell you what little I know of it? And perhaps you can mention it to Sarima. She began to pace. I saw Fiyero, but at the oddest possible moment, family solidarity kicked in. Dear Auntie Guest, said two, in a reasonable tone, we are under the strictest orders from our sister not to allow you to tire yourself by chatting about Fiyero and the sad circumstances of his death. Clearly, two had to work to get this out, as the appetite to hear what Elphaba had to say was huge. Stomachs were rumbling for the meat of it, but propriety won out, or fear of Sarima's wrath, if she were to find out. No, said two again. No, I'm afraid we mustn't express undue interest. We may not listen, and we will not tell Sarima what we hear. In the end, Elphaba left them, drooping. Another time, she kept saying, when you're ready, when she's ready. You see, it's essential. There's so much grief she could be released from, and that she herself could lift too. Goodbye for now, they said, and the door closed shut behind her. The fires in the twin fireplaces mirrored back and forth across the room, and they took up positions of frustrated worthiness at having to obey their older sister. Curse her to hell. All right. That will bring us to a close for today's read. Thank you to any and all who decided to stick around and listen to me read for a little while. I hope you enjoyed it. For any of you who will be seeing this on my YouTube channel later, please feel free on Mondays from 8 to 9-ish Eastern Standard Time to come hang out with me live and watch me read. I very much enjoy having an audience. I like knowing that you guys are there. I like listening to people, or I like reading to people live. It's a personal, favorite thing of mine. But yeah, if you liked this read, if you liked this episode, I guess is what we can call them, and haven't seen the others for whatever reason, please go back to my channel, watch through all of the readings that I've done so far, get yourself caught up for next week. Or if you are caught up, please feel free to enjoy any of the other book readings that I have to offer you on my channel. I hope you love the stories that I read as much as I do. If you have any suggestions for future books to read or any future series that you'd like me to check out, Um, please leave them down in the comment section so that I know what to look for, be it authors or the genre or whatever. But until then, I hope to see you guys next week, same time, same day, Monday from 8 to 9. Until then, stay hydrated, stay safe, and I will see you guys next week. Oh, and by the way, happy St. Patty's Day. Hope you guys had some green beer or wore some green to keep yourselves from getting pinched. If that's a thing for you, wherever you are. All right. Well, you guys have a great night, and I'll see you next week. Bye.